Hello, everyone. So it's another week, another lesson. Let's get into it. So this week, I wanted to practice and work on talking about things that we think, right? Our opinions, our thoughts, how we express ourselves. And so I thought we could do this week to work on talking about our values. So, what is important to you? That is what I want to know by the end of this week. So, at the end of this week, we'll learn how to talk about something we value, what's important to us, um, what are our opinions on certain things. So, that's what I want to get to by the end of the week. Okay, so to start off, I'm going to ask you a bunch of questions and I want you to think about them. So, what are your values? We talked about this last week, but what are your families like? When I say, what are your families like? Think about do you have a mom and a dad? Were you raised by only your mom? uh, is it important for you to have all of your family around you? Is it important for you to be independent, be by yourself after you turn, a certain age? Um, do you think it is important in your family that you take care of your parents when you're older and they're old? What are your families like? Think about that. What do you have, a mom and a dad? Did you, grow up with lots of your family around? What was it like? So what are your families like? Do you treat, meaning like do you act differently um around your relatives, or do you treat your relatives better, right, than strangers? Do you treat your relatives better than strangers? So, what, are you nicer to your family than you are to strangers, or are you more mean to your family than you are to strangers? What is it? How do you treat strangers? Are you friendly to them? Do you treat them like your family? Or are strangers people you don't really worry about and you don't feel like you need to talk to? So these questions are going to get you to start thinking about what are your values? What is important to you? So more questions. Do you treat old people and young people differently? So what does that mean? So do you um so when we say in English, do you treat, we're not talking about like the treat, like something that you give yourself, right? Like my treat is a brownie. I have a treat for you. It's usually like something to give somebody or something small to eat. That's what a treat is. But when we use it as a verb, do you treat? It's um, it's how you act around somebody. Are you nice? Are you mean? That's what it's asking. Like, are you patient? Um, are you upset, impatient? How do you treat old people, right? So that's what it means. How do you treat is just how do you act around these people? Um, so that's what, when we use treat as a verb, do you treat instead of saying I have a treat. A treat is the small thing that you can eat or a present. And when you use it as a verb, it's how you act around somebody. It's how you behave when you're around somebody. So how do you treat old people, um, and young people? Do you treat them differently? Um, why do you think we are alive? Now that's a really big question, and it's also has a lot to do with a value, right? A value is something that is important to you. Um, so why do you think we are alive? That's something that is a value, right? Why do you think we are, here? What is the purpose of living? How important is money to you? Now, this is a good question because obviously in America, you need money to survive. You have to pay for food, everything. You have to pay for everything, right? There's nothing really there isn't a lot of free things in America, right? So money is really important to live. But for some people, they only see money as a way to, buy food that they need. They only see it as something to get other things, but it's not the most important thing. But some people think that having more money makes them more happy, it makes them important, it makes them a good person. So like how important is money to you? Start thinking about that. What is the greatest thing a person can do? What is the best action a person can do? Now, what is this question asking? So I'm asking you, what uh what can you do, or can anyone do that would be the best thing or the most important thing that you can ever do. Like some people think that, oh, the best thing you can do is take care of yourself and have nobody worry about you. And some people think, no, the best thing you can do is like die for your friend or your family. That's the greatest thing you can do. Or, some people really value what we call sacrifice, right? When you put everything about yourself and you ignore it and you do something entirely for somebody else. You do something just for another person. Some people think that's the greatest thing you can do. So, what is the greatest thing a person can do, in your opinion? Is it curing cancer? Is the greatest thing they can do helping a lot of people? What's the greatest thing a person can do? The next question is religion important? Is religion important to you? And then also, are all religions important? That's another question. So you may not have a religion, but you may think that, religion is important, or you may think religion is bad. Who knows? And remember, religion is just the term, the word that we use for all kinds of practices. So Christianity is a religion. Um, Islam is a religion. Uh, if somebody's Jewish, right, that's a religion. Hindu, that's a religion. So Buddhist, that's another religion. So all of those are what we consider religions. So, you may be Buddhist and you think that's really important. But you may not think that the other religions are important, right? So that's of value to you. But you could think that religion is not important and that none of the religions are important. That's something, what are your values? What do you think? Um, so then I think these are the last questions. Yeah. So the last questions I have is, do you think people should be treated differently? Now, when I ask this, I'm talking about things like caste systems. So, in other countries, there are things called caste systems where who your parents are, where you were born, all of that decides how you are treated in society, how people act around you. Do they treat you like you're better or you're less? So, do you think that people should be treated differently? When I ask that is, do you think there's something about people that means that you can treat them like they are better or they are less than you or other people? And the other question I wanted to ask, this is a big question right now, in lots of countries, and has been a big question in many countries for a long, long time, right? Is race important? um, this is something that gets a lot of people really angry, or it makes people really sad. It's a very emotional thing, right? So this question has to do with something that's a very important value for a lot of people. Is race important? Um, the other question, are some people better than others? So this goes with do you think people should be treated differently? Do you think some people are better than others? Do you think everybody is the same and it just depends on how we act and that's it? Or do you think there are things that we can't control about ourselves that make us better or less than other people? So these are some questions to think about. So to kind of end the lesson, I wanted to talk about some American values. These aren't the only values, but I thought of three simple values, things that are important to most Americans. And this is like Republicans, Democrats, all of them culturally. We all kind of share this value, these things that are really important to us. Now, how those values are used or if people actually do it, that's a whole nother issue. So I could say all these and you can be like, Americans don't do that. They're not very equitable, right? But um, the idea is that these are values, these are things that whenever questions come up or um, something happens, people usually go and look to these things as really important. So, and the three things I chose was, individual, time, and equity. We'll go over each of these words. So, American values. So I said individual. Individual means single person or single or separate, right? So you could say, I need to help this individual, and you are talking about a person, right? But you could also say individual, like I need an individual sheet of paper. It just means that you need one or a single one. I need an individual um, an individual tissue, right? You don't want the whole tissue box. You just want one, just a single tissue. So that's what individual can mean. But also, when we use the word individual as a value, you can say individualism, right? So you'll see that this word individual, and it has these three letters, ISM, at the end of it, individualism. It adds a suffix. And what individualism is it's like a belief. It's something that you think. So a lot of Americans value the freedom of one over all others. So individualism focuses on that one single person um, is more important than what's probably best for everybody. One person should be able to choose and decide their own life. And the kind of things I thought of, some phrases that you hear a lot that Americans say is people say, do what is best for you. That's individualism. That's an American value. Do what is best for you. It doesn't matter if other people need something from you. It doesn't matter if you don't want to like let somebody down, right? Or when I say let somebody down, that just means makes them sad or disappointed. Do what is best for you is it's like you just have to do what you need to do. You don't need to worry about anybody else, other people's expectations, any of that. Another thing that you hear is you do not owe anything to anyone. So that just means some people feel like they need to. An example of this would be people who feel a need to pay back their parents, right? In some way. In some cultures, in other countries, it's important for you to, send your parents money when you're older and you have a job, or it's important for you to have your parents live with you. That's just expected. You have to do that. But an American value is individualism. You do not owe anything to anyone. So you can do whatever you want and you don't have to, or you don't need to get permission from anybody to do what you want to. You don't need permission to live a certain way. And people don't expect you to help them. That everybody kind of does things on their own and you take care of yourself. So that's an American value. That's something that a lot of, and this is general, not every American believes in this, but it's something that most Americans, I don't know if they would agree on it in words, but it's kind of how we live our lives in America is everybody just focuses on themselves and worries about themselves and they take care of themselves. That's the general idea. Um, Now, the next one I was talking about is time. And when I say time, I mean past, present, future, right? But why is this an American value? And here are some phrases. Time is money. This is something you hear in English all the time. Time is money, especially in America. Or some people say, oh, I don't have time for this, right? Now, time is a value. It's important to a lot of Americans. Um, and kind of how to think about this, you may be like, what do you mean? So think about it this way. What happens when you are late for work in America? Right? It's kind of a big deal. When you're late for work, you can get in trouble. Your supervisor or your manager can get mad at you. It's not good. In America, we expect people when we set a time for something, we expect people to be there and to show up. That's all. It's kind of something that is very normal in America. It's normal for us to schedule things. Everything is done through a calendar. Now, what does that mean? Everything is done through a calendar. Like through, how does that work? It means everything we do when we see our friends, when we eat dinner, when we go to the store, all of it is decided by what time it is, by what day it is, right? When we see in America, a lot of people will schedule to see their friends. They say, "Do you want to meet at 4:30 on Thursday to go get dinner?" And when you make that time, people expect you to show up at that time. And rescheduling or saying I can't come anymore, it makes a lot of people upset, right? Because they value time. They think time is very, very important, that their time is important. So that's a value, right? The other thing I wanted to talk about that's a kind of general value is equity. So, equity means fair or impartial. And it's a noun, right? So, time is a noun, right? The way we use it in a sentence, it can come at the beginning. Time is money. I don't have time for this. Um, but we use equity like a noun as well. So equity just means fair or impartial. Impartial means fair, pretty much. Americans value equity. Equity is important to her. And what equity kind of means when we talk about a value is that everyone has a right to all of the options and you cannot be forced to live in a certain way. So this one is what a lot of Americans believe. It's a value, it's something that's important to them. This isn't really the case for everybody, though. As you are well aware, not everybody has the same options, and some people are forced to live certain ways because of um, what they kind of just get handed based on how they look, who they are, where they were born, how much money their parents had. So this is like a value. It's something that's important to people, but it's something that isn't always, it doesn't always happen. But everybody, not everybody, most people in America, most Americans, people that grew up here, believe that everyone has a right to all of the options. So if you want to grow up and like if you're a little kid and you want to be a scientist that studies cancer, doesn't matter where you're born, doesn't matter who your parents are, doesn't matter how much money they have, you should be able to go and be a scientist and study cancer. Or if you want to be an electrician, doesn't matter where you live, how much money your parents have, all of that, you can be an electrician. If you want to own your own business, it doesn't matter. That's kind of to get what the value is we value equity. We value the fact that you can choose whatever you want and it doesn't matter who your parents are, any of that. Now, I gave you these examples because maybe you were listening to these and you were like, I disagree. I don't think that is important. Something that a lot of people disagree with in a lot of other cultures is individualism. A lot of other countries believe in collectivism, where what's good for what's good for everybody is what you need to be worried about. Whereas in America, it's a lot of individualism. It's what's best for you is the best thing that you can do. So maybe you were listening to these and you were like, I don't agree with that. Maybe you use time differently or you think of time differently. That you live in America and you have to, go by all these times, but you grew up in a place where, things just happened whenever. You saw your family whenever you wanted to, or you had parties whenever. It wasn't something that was planned or scheduled. Um, and if something didn't happen, people wouldn't get upset, right? If you made plans for a party and then you had to cancel because of the rain, people wouldn't be upset. Or people would be like, oh, yeah, totally, that's okay. So maybe like you were listening to these and you were like, "Oh, that's so different with my values, what I think is important." Or maybe you saw equity and you were like, "That's not important. I don't care about that. I don't care about time. I don't care about individualism." So just start thinking about that. Think about what's important to you. How do you think about the world? And we'll get to the point where you'll be able to meet somebody totally random and you can start talking to them about your values. Like they could be, or job interviews, they could ask you what's important to you. What are some of your values? And you can tell them, well, I believe in that time is important, or you could say, I believe in collectivism. I believe that you should do things that are best for everybody and not just for you. Things like that. So that's our lesson for today. And I will see you in the next one.